morning. It's Friday, February 7th, 2025. This is the Dryden Broadband Committee, Public Committee, first of two monthly meetings. This is the reporting meeting on how things went in the month of January. It is also time just to catch up on things going on with the project beyond that. But we'll really focus on the deck that is put together by the different team members that are on the project. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we'll start with that. Let's see. All right. High-level overview. This is, as I said, February 7th. The municipal infrastructure program is still the number one thing we're all working on. The grant disbursement agreement has been finalized. It has gone back and forth a few times. The last round, we submitted back to them with some formatting edits that we requested to make it read better. There's some like extra periods and extra parentheses. No format, no change to the actual GDA with those changes. They now have that final feedback from us. I believe they'll send it back to us in two stages. One of their team members from Empire State will sign it. It'll come to us for Jason to sign. He's already been authorized by the town board. Then we'll send it back to New York State, and Josh Breitbart, the director of the Connect All office, will sign it, and that will make the GDA official. This is the document that we use to explain how we receive the funding from this state grant. This is that $8.9 million grant on a $9.9 million project. There are four tranches of payments that we can request over the next 2 years. The first one actually ended last week on January 31st. The next one will end on December 31st, then October 31st of 2026. And the final of the four tranches is on December 31st of 2026. At that point, the entire project needs to be done and billed, and bills have to be paid, and we have to submit all the milestones that said we have reached the 2,700 parcels, and here's the money we've spent and paid, and here's the receipts so they can pay us back. There's a little bit of a closeout period after that, so if we do end up spending money next December and getting the invoices and paying the invoices next December, we have, I think, until January 31st of 27 to submit everything. But that's, it's a couple of years away from where we are today. Any questions on the GDA as part of this municipal infrastructure program?
Yeah, Dave, my understanding was that we had already submitted some cost for them related to this, but
I've submitted a budget for that to them. That says this is what we're going to be spending. We have not yet put a package together with all the invoices and all the payments for all those invoices, especially as it was originally going to be through 12/31/24. They moved it out to 1/31/25, so give us an extra month of spending. But also, we couldn't submit it until we've signed the GDA.
Okay. So, but we actually have a whole bunch. We have some costs that we've incurred to give people who didn't have broadband or fast broadband service land-wise. We gave them service that is covered under this. So Dryden has already has expenses.
Yeah, this is a reimbursement
of
the $8.9 million, of which 57% is town of Caroline, 43% is town of Dryden. All that money has to be spent and paid to the vendors, and we have to submit the invoices plus the payment proving we paid these invoices to the state, which is why there are bond resolutions that have been now passed by both towns to do the ban and then eventually pay off those bans or convert them to bonds. So we do have to front all the money. One good thing we found out in the last week was for interest on the bans, we can roll that into the cost of the project that they will pay us, that they'll reimburse us for.
Oh.
It's about a $6 million ban or bond for town of Caroline for their portion of this for what they're going to be spending, there's going to be some interest incurred. We'll be able to roll that interest into what we request for reimbursement. Any questions on the GDA for this program, the grant disbursement agreement?
Yeah, quick question regarding the interest rate. How is that set? What's that based on? Any idea?
Amanda might have the answer to that, what the rate is right now, or how it's, I don't know how it's set. We work with a company, Municipal Solutions, that provides us all of our support for the band and the bond.
Dan, I don't have the interest rate right with me, but pretty much it's I can get you the closeouts from our band. And obviously we go out to bid. Other banks, financial institutions bid on the package through Municipal Solutions.
I guess my question is, can we expect that to be variable for the life of this, or is it, you know?
The interest rate will renew every year because it's a ban, because it's a 1 year borrowing. So then when we borrow again in 1 year, the rate will adjust at that time, but you pay the interest on what you already borrowed at the rate that the first piece was done.
So it could go up or down, you know, if they hit economic trouble.
Yes, the interest rate every year will adjust depending on who bids out the package.
Thanks.
But we should say that all our funds for Dryden and Caroline, when theirs comes, do sit in New York class and earn a nice chunk of interest to help. You know, we're making that money work for us while we're holding it.
Yeah, that's important to know. Thanks.
Yep.
Good question, Dan. All right, so the last part of the municipal infrastructure program, in the last 3 months, the permitting bullet on here said we were ahead of schedule. As of yesterday, we have halted per Hunt and Labella our permit process as we do some cleanup and as we make some other changes. So we can dive into this at some point. I have most of the details. The way it looks is that Hunt, who is not on the call right now, when they applied for the permits for MIP in both the southern half of Dryden and in Caroline especially, they applied to put Dryden fiber on every pole, over 3,000 poles in the town of Caroline. These are electric poles owned by NYSEG. There's the tall ones. NYSEG, which is also known as Avant Grid, that's their official name. And we requested for these 19 permits in Caroline to have access to every single pole in the town of Caroline. In the last month, we spotted that there are telephone poles also along most of the main roads in Caroline, particularly coming from Speedsville to Brooktondale. These are the shorter poles that only carry telco, which is owned by Frontier, and they might have Spectrum cable on them. Usually you see them, they're shorter poles. They only have 2 lines, one's phone, one's cable. Somewhere off in the distance, out of the right of way, between 50 and 200 feet off the road, are the electric lines. From what we can tell, I worked with Labella for about 2 hours yesterday. Hunt applied for every electric pole in the town of Caroline through all these permits, and has been approved for almost all of them, and has gone to bid with electrical make ready to have the electrical companies like Richardson go on to each of these poles and move the electricity lines and the other lines up and down to make room for our fiber. Less than 3 weeks ago, and I shared this with the team from Caroline as well as the team from Hunt, I noticed that throughout parts of Caroline, the right of way for these electric poles is really, it's not in the right of way. They're in people's fields, they're in gorges, they are in fields that are surrounded by fences and horses and cattle. They go through people's backyards. And at that point, when I mentioned that, Hunt revisited and told Labella, we need to rework all these poll applications. We should not have blanket requested every poll application, every poll in the town. We should have driven around the town and said, we're going to use the telco Frontier-owned polls that are right along the road, and we're not going to request permits for using the NYSEG or Avant-Grid polls that are way off the right of way. That happened last week. So this week, there's been a scramble and a halt between Hunt and Labella to figure out what is the actual plan for permits for polls in Caroline. That halt probably saved us a lot of money. However, the work that's already been done, some of that is going to have to be redone a second time. I'll stop there. Dan has his hand raised. I'll try to answer questions at this point. Dan?
Was there money involved in all the other permits, just in requesting them? Is there a fee for that?
Yes, over $100,000 has already been invested in permitting.
I know, but if we don't use the electric poles that were originally thought we would pursue, did we lose some money just proposing those?
I believe so, because they have to be looked at and engineered. People have to go on site and look at the poles and figure out who owns the poles and where the work would be done on each pole.
Yeah, and Labella would definitely have incurred some costs just trying to get all the documentation together for that. So
yes,
and Hunt.
Mark, Kate. Mark first, and Kate.
Yeah, I pretty much had the same question as Dan. I guess are there permits that we've paid for that are gonna now be vacated or whatever?
Seems highly likely.
Highly likely. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to audit what has been done and what the new plan is going to be, and determine where we requested work to be done that didn't need to be done.
And I think there's a possibility, I've seen this before, that Frontier has adjusted, if we have asked for payment, or Frontier asked for payment and they adjusted the number of polls, we have got a credit back. So it's possible that some of the NYSEG Frontier will get adjusted. The cost for Labella, though, I don't know how that's a question we have to follow up on. But I think that's where our next engineering firm is going to really help us.
Right.
So
okay.
I can't say, at least I think they will adjust, because NYSEG, Frontier, Verizon's all dependent on the number of polls. So I think if that number changes, there could be credits or additionals on both ends, but it's the cost to Labella. I think that could be a difference.
Right, because the engineering work by Labella is water under the bridge is basically what you're saying, right? So
yeah, they
okay.
took a contract out to this company called Wagner, who they've worked with for 10 plus years, to go on site and do this work. They've already done a lot of the work.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Kate,
Yep.
thanks. Kate, and then Tony. Kate.
So we're not using a mix of polls like NYSEG and Frontier. We're just going to shift all the way over to the telephone polls. Is that it?
We will use some NYSEG polls. There are in the more densely populated residential areas, Brooktondale, Route 79, maybe the actual hamlet of Speedsville, where the telephone poles are, where the electric poles are right in front of the houses, it makes most sense to use those. It's the long runs, especially that long run from Speedsville all the way to basically to Brooktondale, and then from Brooktondale south all the way to the entrance to Shandagan, where the electric poles are anywhere from 50 to 200 feet off the right of way, where we need to send bucket trucks to the base of these poles to bring the fiber and to do the electrical moves. It's very costly to try to go into these fields over and over. And we won't need to, because there are telephone poles that are owned by Frontier on the right of way on those same roads. However,
So in the long run, that's one place where we'll be saving some money.
yes, that's true.
Well, I think that depends on the shape of the Frontier poles, which if they look at the ones around here, they are usually in terrible shape.
Yeah, there's a lot of
But-
pole replacements that have been needed for both NICEAG and Frontier poles. It's true.
But we don't pay, we sometimes pay the whole cost of that, but we don't pay the cost of that. Isn't that right, Dave? I couldn't
Yes.
quite.
I don't have the clear
Yeah.
answer about exactly how that call is made, but what will happen is the age of the pole, if the pole is at the end of its life, needs to be replaced anyway. The owner of the pole, whether it's Frontier or NICEAG, Avant Grid, they might do the pole replacement on their own and pay for it. Or if they're like, no, this pole is okay for us. If we didn't need to do this for you, you have to make the payment for the pole. Now, there are cases where the pole replacement would be so substantial that we would have to pay for, where we would switch to doing underground for a few poles or a few miles, because in that case, it's cheaper to change out aerial construction with underground construction, even though underground construction is generally 70% more per mile. There's a certain trade-off of, do we have to pay for the pole replacement, or do we have the option to go underground? And that's one of the things that Hunt and Labella would be working on together, is now that we know what the estimates are for all these poles and permits, now we can analyze which ones should be done underground versus aerial. But this isn't even that question. This is which ones should be done on Frontier telephone poles versus NICEAG electric poles. Tony.
So are we sure that in some of these areas, so I was just looking at some of the roads we're talking about. And for example, on Old 76 Road, the telephone, all the telco stuff is on the same power poles that are like 100 feet off the road. There's no Frontier poles.
It's some of them.
Alongside the road.
It depends.
In some cases, there's Frontier poles on one side of the road and NICEAG poles on the other side of the road. And it looks like they may be doing what they're doing in a lot of areas, which is replacing the shorter poles with taller poles, and those Frontier poles may eventually go away. Like, do we know that Frontier is not in the process of moving their stuff over to the other poles?
I don't know all those questions at this point.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is this really requires, it seems to anyway, require like somebody drive around and look at all these poles, which is going to take a lot of time.
Yes, but that is the job. I mean, the
Yeah.
job is to go and figure out. I mean, we can't send Sierra Utilities to string the fiber, or Lightspeed to go and splice the fiber, or eventually Clarity to go and bring the fiber to the homes, unless it's done the right way. And someone has to go the first step to every pole.
And I guess my point is that this isn't a blanket thing. It's like it's not like in all cases we're going to use the Frontier pole versus a NICEAG pole. And there are cases where there are NICEAG poles which have the telco stuff on it that are back way off the road, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with those.
Yeah, it's about 90 miles of fiber in the town of Caroline. We have to know where every pole is along those 90 miles. And I think the thing is, like, it was 3,000 poles, which is a lot more per mile than we would expect. I think because they just went large. I think we'd expect like 25 poles per mile.
Yeah.
So it's a little higher than we would have expected. But I think that's because they just said, let's just grab every pole we can get. And then then the other parts, because I spoke with LaBelle about this, is the fact that you pay rent on these poles if you get a permit for them.
Right.
Well, we're not going to use these poles. We don't want to pay rent on them.
That's absolutely right. I think there's, it's just gonna, I guess, it's just not, it's not a one thing, right? We just can't say, well, okay, in all these cases, we're going to do this versus that. It's going to have to be a case by case kind of basis.
Right. Which is why we hire an engineering firm to do this part of the process.
there's supposed to be, there's tools that these companies have that they go out to every single pole that's on the route. And they put a device on the poles that tells them what's going on with it, what all the pieces are, how far the cables are off the ground, how many pieces of wire are coming off that pole in every single direction. And that's the way this is supposed to be done. And it sounds like that didn't get done.
You know, it explains how the MIP, how they got all those permit applications so fast.
Yeah, there's some other things I have to uncover. Labella, remember, is the customer that we've hired, that we pay. Labella is our vendor. They have the relationship with both Frontier and with Avangrid, NICEAG.
Mhm.
And they are the only engineering firm that has that relationship with Frontier, where they can go in and make the call on reconciliation of, we want to put something on this pole, we can do that pole. Like, they don't have to go to someone else to do that. They have that relationship with Frontier to do that work. When I spoke with them yesterday, like I said, I had to get some detail. I referenced an email that was sent to me from Hunt regarding the poles and the hold on the project, saying that Hunt believed that Labella was supposed to be doing something back in December to deal with these pole applications. When I presented that information, that evidence to Labella, they were like, this is completely untrue. There's nothing about this statement that's factual. Labella will go to bat for us. As I said, we're paying Labella. They're doing work for us, just like we're paying Hunt. But they're like, these statements from Hunt regarding their application and the process and the halting of it is what Hunt is saying is just factually not true. So we need to unwind some of this. I'll go to the last bullet of this on this slide, which is we're evaluating change to both one of our hardware providers and one of our subcontractors. The hardware provider we're thinking about working with is a switch from Sienna to Calix. We've met with them. We talked about them a little bit. The subcontractor is our work with Hunt. We've already shared this by email with the committee and with the team from Caroline. And I think most of the subcontractors on the call, we're just not, I just don't have the confidence that Hunt can do this project for us the way we need to get done on the timeline. And we've looked for other alternatives that we're moving forward with. All that was done before this old permitting issue as part of MIP. Like, we already were planning on making a change. This adds a lot more to the case. All right, let's see Mark and then Graham. The questions, Mark.
Yeah, I just this came to light because of you doing some field observations in Speedsville, if I understand kind of what happened here. So thank you for doing that. And if I misspoke, sorry, but anyway, thank you. That kind of.
I wish I was not. I wish I didn't have to get credit for this, but on Saturday, January 18th, I drove from Speedsville in the town of Caroline northwest toward Brooktondale, and I spotted all these power lines way off in the distance in these fields. And I made a note of it. I emailed the team from Hunt on the 29th. I also forwarded that email to the team in Caroline. This seems a little suspicious, like, not really sure. I just want to make sure that we're doing a double check to make sure we're using the right polls. That afternoon, Hunt emailed Labella and said, hey, something's going on with our applications. We need some support. And they tried to turn around and blame Labella for the applications. The emails that Labella got came immediately, that they shared with me, came immediately after the email I shared with Hunt questioning using these polls. So I wish I hadn't driven. I wish it wasn't just on me that I happened to drive through this and catch this. I wish the engineering firm knew this ahead of time. But yeah, I'm glad we did. It's probably changes the financing. We have some money in a buffer for the project. This probably makes it pretty tight, and it would have probably gone way over if we hadn't made this change sooner.
Yeah, but think where we'd be if you hadn't done anything.
I know.
If you hadn't
I'm
done
trying to
it,
think about that.
that's like wicked bad ugly right there.
I would say, like, I wouldn't expect this much extra weekend activity for the next any executive director on a project like this should not have to do this kind of field work to double check that the lead
That's
engineer
right.
is
Well-
doing their job.
Well, Dave, it may mean we have a slight gap that we need more not to go in between. I mean, it's pretty hard with the amount of resources we have to keep track of all the vendors, especially when we're counting on Hunt to do some of that for us. Also, you would expect that Labella might have noticed this too, but just because they're sending people out to look at them, but
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to tell. It probably is. Yeah.
But we-
The question is, can Labella, so we have submitted all these permits. Labella got them. They submitted them to the NICEAG and to Frontier, right? So they've put a hold on all of them, or do we need to put a hold on some of them? Because I mean, there's like I forget, there were like 15 or 16, I can't remember, of these. I suspect some of them we can go forward, or we just need to audit them.
So there are 19 in Caroline and about
19.
10 more in Dryden. I believe one of them has already been sent. 3 of them have been sent out to bid for electrical make ready for electricians to go actually do the work. One of them has come back and the electrician was assigned to go do the work, to like make the moves. Now, what we're concerned about is that they might be making moves on a pole that we never will actually use. Now, that's actually a part of the project that's still in Dryden. We haven't done any bids on the Caroline portion yet, but the geography of the poles, both the Frontier poles and the NICEAG poles in Dryden, are not that much different than Caroline. If you drive down Irish Settlement Road from 13 to 79, you'll see Frontier or telephone company poles along the road in the right of way, and off in the fields on either side, and sometimes in the woods, you'll see the NICEAG poles, the avant-grid poles. So Labella was waiting for Hunt to come back with changes, and they had returned 16 changes to the application. 16 of the permits had already come back from Hunt with reworked engineering, where they cut up, they just removed a whole bunch of poles from the applications. Said, we're not going to use those poles that we planned on originally. We want to use these other poles instead. And they had, I think, 3 more to go through and edit. However, when I talked to Labella yesterday, I said, we are changing engineering firms. I don't want another firm to come in and have to redo a redo of what Hunt did originally. So said, let's halt this. There's a process they call desktop review, where you don't have to go to every road and every pole in person. You can look at the plans, you can look at the permits, you can see the maps, and you can do it as a phase 1 and say, here's the first group of permits. Let's get them back on board and on track, get them approved, and then go to the next ones. The last 2 things regarding the permits, if you've been here for a year and a half, like I have been, or longer, or even less time, you know that permitting takes the longest amount of time, including the electrical make-ready stage. I've been in talking to Labella and talking with Richardson, and I'll be meeting with Cheryl Richardson this afternoon. Both of those organizations said the speed of permitting is not because of either of them, their priorities, or the time it takes to get these permits approved. It has generally been because of delays in the engineering contractor that we hired to get the materials to them properly. So the continual, it takes a year to get permits and poles done and electrical make ready. These vendors were like, no, we can do this stuff really quick. All the stuff that was submitted took 4 months. It didn't take 12 on the Labella avant-grid Frontier side. So we're just uncovering more and more information about the speed of the process.
So just to summarize, they're all on hold at the moment. We need to do some review. And if we change engineering companies, that will let them help with some of that review. Is that
That'll be their
goal
first.
or can we get Labella to help with some of that review, because aren't they engineering as well? Or
But they don't know the network design that we're choosing. They don't know how
Okay.
we're, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think they probably could do some of that, but they're like, that's not what you hired us to do.
Yeah.
And this engineering firm manages the rest of the project in its entirety. So the engineering firm should make this call. Now, that is also related to the other change you're evaluating with hardware providers. Scott Brennan and I talked with Calix quite a bit over the last couple months to figure out the cost of implementing a Calix solution instead of Sienna. And as of yesterday, they sent us some quotes for doing the work, changing what's in the POPs, changing what's on the OLTs, which is on the telephone poles or the electric poles, changing what's in the homes, even on the Wi-Fi devices. However, given that we may be doing a bit of a redesign of the network, we're putting a pin in the switch from Sienna to Calix until the new engineering firm can provide their insight and their design of the network for how they would make use of these. The big reason is each of these OLTs that go on the poles that have 4 to 8 ports. We usually use ones that have 8 ports. They cost $250. If we need to buy 100 of them, it's different than if you had to buy 200 of them, because we spread them out in different ways. And the engineering firm needs to be involved with that decision, because that will change the calculations on making a switch from Sienna to Calix. So all these things end up being tied together pretty tightly. But as we've said, as we've known since I started, the engineering firm is the foundational partner of the project. If they're doing their job, everyone else's job is relatively easy. If it's not working out, everyone else's job is pretty tough.
Yep. And my concern is that the way we've sort of picked Calix or identified them, I don't know if we've done enough diligence on that portion, and that's what I would recommend, that if we're going to make that sort of shift, is we see if there's more of an open source or more of this, or I don't feel comfortable, because it's the only solution that's being presented to the board anyway. So I would want to make sure that, we've at least looked or have a strategy to look through what are we looking for, and so we don't make the same.
Yeah, I mean, we're
mistake
probably
or whatever.
30 to 60 days from making a hardware provider move. We have enough Sienna devices to build what we need to build for this quarter,
Mhm.
and Plume devices for the Wi-Fi. So having a new engineering firm come in and give the recommendation, the reason that Calix is by far in the front runner for this is they run 18 out of the 19 ISPs that Netegrity services for support and network support, installations, and customer support. They work with 19 ISPs across New York, Pennsylvania, and New England. 18 of them use Calix for the POPs, for the OLTs and the telephone poles, for the ONTs at the homes, and for the Wi-Fi devices. We're the only one that uses Sienna. It's just it's standard.
Yeah, but you haven't looked in the United States, how many does that break down? I don't know. So, I mean, I understand that, and I understand Scott Netegrity likes them. That's a very good pro, but I do think that if you're going to make that shift, you really want to look at it. That's what I would say. Or we could say we don't have resources to do it. That's what we're going to do because it's our best thing.
Yeah.
So
right now it's like, I'm like 50-50, 40-45, 55 on making a switch, because it's costly, but also means we're going to have POPs with both Sienna and Calix devices, OLTs on poles with both devices that have to line up with the POPs, and then the homes have to use the same set. So the biggest headache on that will be for Eric, who's on the call from Clarity and the Clarity team, to know that when they're getting a call for installation, that this is a home that is within the 8-house domain of the OLT, which is either Calix or Sienna, which means I need to bring in either a Calix or Sienna ONU, and then either a Plume device or the Calix Wi-Fi device. So it gets a lot messier. The only reason that it still makes sense to do it is we are less than 20% of the estimated capacity of the project or the full build out. We purchased about enough for 800 houses. Our goal is 4,000. So we could make the change and still have 80% on the new provider. But we just haven't put everything together yet. And the change in the engineering firm definitely slows this decision down, which might work in our favor to figure out, is there another option that we can look at? Or at least to compare on pricing and service.
Yeah, I would like to see a comparison and the pricing, which we've not seen either to say. But you know, if you're dealing with only one vendor, then it's, you know, they got to set their price. I don't know how they know, you know.
Yeah, maybe I have a worksheet we can go over in 2 weeks. Maybe by then the engineering firm will be with us. We can look at it together and see if it makes sense to do it. I communicate with Tracy, who is helping out with all sales, but also inventory, and Eric pretty frequently. I think we have what we need for equipment, as I said, for the next 2 months before we have to make this change, or before we would make this change. There seem to be a lot of benefits, but there's also a cost, and the switching cost is part of that. So there's a lot of stuff under what's going on with the project, with MIP, with the permitting, the subcontractors. Before I move on to the rest of the reports, any questions before we move on?
I would just say I'm deeply concerned that the permitting needs to get relooked at. I mean, that's
Yes.
all. That's just what I'll voice, and I think we need to accelerate that bit. So if we can, I mean, or do it as fast as we can, which I think is what we're doing. So
I think I would say the 4 things that make me feel okay about where we are. It's February 7th. We still have 22 months left, 23 months left. Number 1, both Labella and Richardson are like, we can move fast. Like, it's not a year. It's not 8 months. We can move fast. We get the stuff, we can field the teams, we can get the work done. So those are the first 2 things. The third is the engineering firm we're looking at. They came in, and we'll talk about it at the noontime meeting with them. They basically were like, we can complete all of the town of Dryden, not MIP Caroline, MIP Dryden, all of MIP Dryden, all of MIP Caroline, and all of Dryden before the end of next year. They run 10,000 miles of fiber a year. Our whole project is less than 300. They're like, yes, very possible to do it on that timeline.
And is that counting that they can now do all the way up for putting up the MPTs too? Because remember they were only having to do some of the work, but it sounded like they could do a lot more of the work, and we don't know why it wasn't put out to them. But
yeah, so they feel comfortable with the timeline and the ability to get this done. And the last part is, as far as the budget for the engineering firm for MIP, as well as finishing all of Dryden fiber, getting it to every house in town by the end of next year, their budget was less money than the one we have in Hunt. Like, they came in about 18% less than the MIP project, which is another place we can use that money to make up the expense of fixing the poles or other challenges that might come up that we haven't seen yet. So that's why I feel good. Like, Labella and Richardson are on board to get this done and hit the deadlines. The new firm is also on board to do not just MIP on time, but wrap the entire Dryden fiber project up quicker and for less dollars, because frankly, they know what they're doing. They do this so frequently. They know how to estimate and get the job done. Kate?
Sorry, what percentage did you say it was lower by?
18% less on the MIP
18%.
cost.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think, Graham, the other thing is that the pole permits that you're concerned about, this has been something that my group has been thinking about since this project started, that they were hearing that it takes 12 months to get a pole permit. It's not true. It shouldn't take that long. They usually don't take that long. They happen a lot quicker. So I think that what Dave is saying is these people are going to come in here and they're going to get stuff done in a heartbeat, and we'll be in good shape.
Thanks, Tracy. But that's
Mm.
there's no benefit for Labella or Richardson to not tell the truth about what they're able of doing. And they're both very positive and aggressive to the timeline. They're like, you pay us. We're doing the work. We know what we can do. We know what we can resource. Mark?
Dave, I presume the new firm would prioritize the MIP because of the deadline looming,
Yeah.
right?
They did. There was a bit of a discussion with Labella yesterday. They were pretty shocked that we wouldn't try to roll the other parts of Dryden into the MIP work, especially when you look at the map where it comes down through Dryden. You're skipping parts of roads that you're like right there. You might as well do the permitting and the construction there while you're doing it, instead of sending those trucks back to the same roads, but doing the other side of the street or doing the side. Like Labella was pretty shocked that it would be designed this way. I think we'll find the same thing from the new firm as we move closer to working with them as they start the project. Like they are very confident. We'll have a discussion with them at noon, but also we can do a follow-up. But just like this is what we do.
Could that discussion be recorded for people who can't attend?
Yeah, I can either get it recorded by them. I think they use Zoom.
That would be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. You want to hear about other things that happened in January? There were other things.
Yep.
All right. We did add about 94 parcels in the month of January. We're now at 1673. We went up from 27-ish% to 28.6%. 52 of those locations are on South Caswell, Ray, and Hill. Those are like roads off of Lee Road that have like 2 or 3 houses each. And then just last week, added coverage for West Main, Wall Street, in the village of Dryden, a little bit of Highland Drive and Highland Crescent, and 1 house on Goodrich. We still have work to do on the rest of Goodrich leading up to Hilton. And then continuing west on West Dryden Road to Springhouse and then toward 38. There's also work that's being conducted between Syracuse Utilities and Lightspeed, our construction company, and our splicing company on Route 38 north of Freeville, going from Freeville up to the Groton town line, as well as on West Dryden Road, going all the way out to the Lansing Dryden town line. They have their instructions in place, both Syracuse Utilities, who does the construction, and Lightspeed, who does the splicing, even without having Hunt being part of the project at this point. So they continue to do their work. With the gap of Hunt no longer being engaged in the project, even though we haven't come to terms with this with the termination, those teams can still continue working on construction. So not only that, but as I said about Labella and Richardson, the team from Lightspeed and the team from Syracuse Utilities are getting paid by us. They're not getting paid by Hunt. They have been directed by Hunt, but they're being paid by us. They know the importance of this project. And this week, Chris from Lightspeed, who does the splicing, is now working with and sharing KMZs directly with Clarity so we can do installations on these parcels as they come live. So we're trying to maintain as much forward momentum as we can with what's already been developed and put out there, at least on the Dryden parts of the project. I do still expect there to be some dip in productivity on construction when we make this change, but for now, our construction and splicing partners are working even closer with me and now with Clarity than they had before. And now we're at 294 paying customers as of February 1st. Probably have a few more now that we're 7 days in. We had our biggest month ever in January with 153 inbound requests. So that's the lengthiest executive summary that we've done so far. We'll go to some of the committees and talk about where we are, the committees, some of the other teams, and look at some more specifics.
Dave,
Go for it, Tony.
if somebody's in the green area and puts in a request, what's the average wait time?
2 weeks, I believe. We're scheduling right now for the week of the 20th.
Yeah, we're
But
at
it
2 weeks,
depend-
but it could be shorter if,
Yeah,
like if there was somebody that got signed up and there's somebody going to a address that's right near them, it's possible that they could get service faster.
Yeah, makes
Correct.
sense.
And as of right now, I believe we have 305
It's
connected customers, and there's 40 pending for the next couple of weeks or month.
I want to give some I want to share this in our request service form. There's a field that people can add comments about the desire for the service or where they are. I did some cherry picking. I picked out some ones that I wanted to share with the committee. I'll share this entire deck with you so you can look at it in detail. I thought these are useful for us to at least see together as part of the operations of this beyond all the work we do in construction is the end users, people who want the service. So currently our only internet service option is through Frontier. Fiber spectrum is only available on the Ellis Hollow side of Hunt Hill. Spectrum quoted is $12,000 to be connected. Our part would be $3,000. So this is people who are not just unhappy with Spectrum, but they have no service provider. They're either using DSL or dial-up. Another one down I highlighted. I can see that Ringwood Road is coming next year. We're so close. Just a note of encouragement about you doing this. They have 3 buildings on their property. All will require a network. So when we see a house or an address, we typically think of it as this is one customer, but some cases where there's multiple, there's more business than just one. Similarly, I realize there are not many houses located in the area. However, the farmhouse on the corner and 3 apartments, 2 duplexes, there would be 7 residences that would greatly benefit from this. So there's demand. It continues to be strong. I worry that we seem to be the last to get service. I hope the system can be completed before more restrictive regulations on municipal broadband are passed. At this point in time, I don't know that there are any restrictive regulations on deck. We have a good partnership with New York State through our state assembly person and state Senate offices. So at the state level, I don't see any restrictive regulations coming our way. It would save me a lot of time and money, monopoly. We're excited to be part of Dryden Fiber. We've been waiting since it was first announced. Spectrum's overpriced, not reliable. We lost Spectrum last night for 10 hours for severe weather. Maybe there were 2 inches of snow and no wind. These are all comments just since November 1st through our registration form. So people are excited and there's a lot of demand. One other thing that happened 2 weeks ago, there's a Freeville listserv. If you're not on it, I recommend checking it out. A person who lives in the Freeville listserv area, maybe in the village, said I want to do a check with those who have signed on with Dryden fiber optic service for your internet provider. And the 4 bullets are some of the feedback. We've had it, rock solid, no problem, very pleased. We've not had any issues. Customer service is very responsive. We've been extremely pleased. So these are completely without us saying like, hey, this is Dryden Fiber asking to tell us how great we are. This was a resident on a public listserv and other customers just reported back to that customer, back to that prospective customer about their experience. I feel like it's important for you as the Public Broadband Committee to see some of the other communication going on behind the scenes about the project.
Dave, my personal experience when I've called in, you get a person within a minute. I don't have to wait 8, 10, 12 minutes when I had to call in for Spectrum when it was not working. So I can attest
If you can
that
get to a person.
yeah, if you can get to a person, yes. So we can attest, I can personally attest that Dryden Fiber is way more responsive than
Yeah, I was like,
Spectrum.
in October, November, I was like, how good is our service? Let me take off the what's that like hidden CEO job, TV show. I like called up I called up Integrity. I didn't call them Integrity. I called up Dryden Fiber support number, which is now 607-844-7800 on a Sunday to see what would happen. And they picked up the phone right away. They didn't were like, wait, are you Dave Makar? They didn't care. They were like, we're here. What do you need? How do we help you? It was really great. So thank you, Graham, for trying it out. Anyone else can just call and see how we do. It's awesome to talk to a person right away. They are staffed 24/7, 365. As I mentioned earlier, Scott works with 19 ISPs with this call center. So they know when the call comes in that it's a Dryden Fiber call to our number, so they can answer on behalf of Dryden Fiber. But because there are almost 20 other ISPs working with them, we don't have to pay for a full-time 24-hour staff. And we pay a fee for a number of customers on the platform per month. All right. These are the goals I set back in the January meeting. As of January 31st, we had 294. The goal was 302. Tracy said right now we're over 300, but we are 7 days into February. This is the goal. 65 per month brings us up to about 1,000 by the end of the year. So we're a little bit behind as of February 1st. Let's do the other department reports. We'll start with customer base with Amanda.
Good morning. You can see here the increase was, sorry, I hit my thing, I can't see it. Residential customers were now at 278. That was 46 new customers. We did have 47 installs. The one was only due to somebody moved, the decrease. And then on the commercial side, the one decrease was somebody just switched from the preferred level to the standard level. So really it was just a flip-flop, not really a loss of customers.
So it was a +1 on standard. It was one of the two, the one that came over preferred.
I'm sorry, say that again, Dave?
So on preferred, it's -1. Was one of the two in the standard the switch?
Yes.
Okay.
Amanda, talking with somebody I know that's on Dryden Fiber, had a little bit of a billing problem, and it appeared to be because the credit card address does not match the billing address. Has that issue been taken care of?
So that's really kind of an issue of, obviously, I'm using the address that I'm given by the service support team where the install happens. And so if they happen to have a different mailing address, it's not really billing. It's a matter of when the credit card system is going in and checking. They're like, oh, wait a minute, this could be a fraud because it has a different mailing address.
Right.
And so I said to, so the customer, I think if it's the same one, I gave her here's some possible solutions, check these couple things. And she said that the person did reply back and say it was the mailing address and then it was fine. So yeah, we get these rejects every so often, and sometimes sometimes it's just fluky. I'm still haven't figured out the rhyme or reason, but I know a few little techniques to kind of go ask the customer, like, hey, do these couple things. Let's see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, we'll try again.
So do they have a way to adjust the billing address? Versus,
yes, they can.
Versus their service
they can go in and
okay.
They can go in and change it right in the portal.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Amanda. I think as a pure business side, you can see the average commercial customer base is $100 a month, average residential $50. So we should try to get as many commercial customers to join our venture as possible. If you've been in my office, there's a checklist of the commercial customers we'd like to have join the platform. Many of them are already in the green zone. If you know of anyone who owns, operates, has decision-making as part of their job for a business venture in the town of Dryden, have them take a look at Dryden Fiber. We'd love to have them be part of our network.
I can also say we can now start, Dave and marketing got new postcards for businesses. Because in the past, I could never send a residential pricing postcard. So now in the past 2 sets of postcards that have gone out, any of them that are clearly a business, just a Dryden Agway was a recent list. And so I sent a business postcard to Dryden Agway. So I think that'll be helpful as we can now market a little more efficient, well, I don't say efficiently, but simply to some of these businesses.
Yeah, definitely more effectively to say like, hey, you're a business, you should be on our business tier. I'm glad you started sending those postcards out. That's good. That's good. That's why we have them.
Yep.
Maybe when the spring comes, doing some door to door with those cards will be useful too, especially in the village where it's pretty densely populated with businesses. All right. I'm going to kind of skip through the hunt stuff because they did not update a lot. Can't say there's a lot of stuff that's in process that's beyond permitting. Everything where it says permitting is complete, this is the permit status, means construction is either there or happening or closing in. So Dryden 9 is this brown spot. Dryden 10 is this fuchsia pink spot. 4 and 5 have been done for quite a while with Etna. Caswell Road is mostly done. And then Dryden 12, which is a section of 366 from Freeville to Etna to 13, and part of 366 from the NYSEG Baker Hill Road area to the FH Fox Bridge. The construction is working on those. So when they're done with the construction, ideally they would take the as built, this is what we built, and hand it to the engineering firm to verify, make the KMZ files to send to Clarity, as well as to update our public map. We are working on routing around that, so that way when this work gets done, it can get published. We can notify people who are in these zones that they can get service, and that Clarity has what they need to do the installs. Again, it's part of this off-ramp, on-ramp between the engineering firms.
Dave, where does these maps actually live? Like the files that generate them and stuff, are they all under, I know Hunt can go change those. Do we actually have possession of those? I mean, or?
We do not have possession of the maps that have these colored squares in. We have KMZ files that show actually something slightly more useful on the construction and installation, which shows where the fiber is, where the OLTs are, where the ports are for each of the houses, all the assignments. We have those files up until I think last Friday. So anything that's been green as of up to last Friday, we have what we need to do the installs. We don't have any doubts that at this time that Hunt will provide us everything we need. We don't think they're off. We think that the separation will be amicable and they'll provide us what we need, both legally and what's contractually owed to us. They have access to our server, so they can put everything on our SharePoint drive. As of right now, we don't have access to those, but we don't think they're going to be hostile and try to hold stuff back or do anything that will impact the drydenfiber.com website and the map that's on there. As I said, this is the permitting update from, as it says, as of February 1st. Kate from Hunt was continuing to do some work this week, even though other parties within Hunt had stopped doing work. All these are now into some degree of question regarding this issue that we talked about at the top of the call. In addition, these MIP maps that Hunt added to the deck, again, they need to be evaluated. This was part of acquiring every single pole in both towns and in the regions, not the specific pole we actually definitely needed for the project. This has not been updated, the address availability. The math I shared on the summary slide was from this plus what we knew was added last week and the week before. All right, why don't we go to installations and Tracy and Eric.
So I'm sorry, but I forgot to change that number. I had 49 installations completed. I put 51 in and then had a conversation with Amanda and we amended that and I forgot to change it. But still, we did pretty good. It was a pretty good month. The number of installations pending at the first of the month were 37. Like I said, we're up to 40 and 8 have already been completed this month. So things are moving right along. The DLX information is still an issue, but I've got some DLX fiber drops coming. They're supposed to ship next week, so we should see them. We may see them by the end of next week. We can only hope. The frozen ground, that's not going to change.
Remind me what the DLX is.
So there's 2 different kinds of MPTs or
Got it. Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
Yep.
He made it short and sweet.
Yep.
And there's only a few of those, supposedly, there's only a few of those DLX components out there. And it was because that early on there was a shortage of the other style, so they ordered them instead. But
Yeah.
the fiber drop cables are not interchangeable between
Yeah.
the 2
Yeah,
different
I remember
ports.
that. Yep. I get
Okay,
it.
very good.
Yeah, last summer, last spring, when we came over Mount Pleasant through Ringwood and then down Yellow Barn Road, we ran out of the CommScope
I
OLTs.
think they're called hardened.
Hardened. So we ran out of those. They made the switch to DLX to get them installed. They do need the DLX drop cables, which is a different type of cable. That new area of the village of Highland Crescent. When I spoke to Chris Glover at Lightspeed on Tuesday or Wednesday, he said they did install DLX 8 port connectors on those poles. Eric?
Yeah, I told them to just leave them in for now because we're getting those cables in at the end of next week, and we should be in the good time frame to get them installed on the same day. The scheduled install date. Sorry.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, Chris, again, this is like the level of engagement and positive aggressiveness of our subcontractors to get this thing done. Chris was like, I'll go and take out those DLX 8 port devices and put in the other kind so we can get these installs done today. If you want, I can go, like, he was like, I'll go in a snowstorm tomorrow and do it. Like, and then Eric was like, the schedule time is far enough out that the DLX cables are coming in. We don't have to make that change. But, you know, the willingness of the subcontractors to get this thing done and put the right things in the right places it's admirable. So good month, almost 50 installs in January, and it's still early February. Probably will get to at least 50 in February. We have been maintaining our speed of installs based on continuing to add more green zones and relying on early adopters to sign up. It's now time to basically get the next phase of the buying group, the early majority, people who not necessarily they're not the ones waiting in line for the new iPhone. They're waiting for their neighbors to do it. Well, now their neighbors have the service. They're more comfortable. So we can do some more of a push to tell everyone, if you're in the green zone, talk to your neighbors. They already have the service, and then come on board. So we should be able to continue the pace just because we have 1,600 green zone parcels without worrying, again, that the engineering or construction timeline slow down. It should not have an impact on installations. We just need to work on demand at this point to move demand forward.
I think the interesting thing there, Dave, is that when somebody signs up right now, it's pretty quickly that we get them on the schedule. If you can see the sign-up sheet, it's like we've got almost everybody that signed up in the last month has been scheduled, and we're moving very quickly getting people on, and it's kind of interesting because early on it was not like that.
No, I mean, of the last, dozen and a half people, say the last 15 people signed up, 14 of them were in the green zone. Like, people are, we've probably acquired the early adopters, people who heard about the service, even though they weren't in the green zone, said, sign me up. People who are signing up, people who are already in the green zone are like, great, I'm ready. My neighbors have it. I know you have it for me. So it's the kind of the growing shift of the type of people you want to have buying now, because they're not afraid to try something new because it's being adopted by their neighbors and those early adopters. Let's go back to Amanda on the financial reporting. I know we're a little over already, but why don't we talk about these slides?
So this is I need some feedback from the board. I have redone the financials because it was just it was messy. We're learning. So I've tried to consolidate it onto one, at least one piece of it. So I've put all of the current operating, but also the current construction all on the same slide, including the balance sheet, showing accounts receivable, accounts payable, and etc. How much detail does this committee want to see? Do you want to see less detail? Again, I'm also working in the constraints of the size of the slide, so it's readable. So what's some feedback on this? Obviously, if you want to email me, that's fine too, and let me know, just again, for time constraints today. Dave, could you go forward to the next slide? So we can also show this. This is also something we put into place so that we can start answering the question about, hey, when are we going to cover our operating costs? So I've started to track the operating expenses. Again, operating being the things we have to have because we're running the service, not the construction side, and not the installations. So installations are its own, like there's 3 buckets. There's operating, there's installations, and there's construction. So anyway, so this is operating expenses for the past 12 months along, showing revenue from commercial and residential, just so you can start to have a visual. I would be glad to update this every month, just so you can start to see it. But again, Dave, if you're willing to go back to the other slide, any thoughts on how much detail, less detail, more detail you would like to see?
Amanda, was that basically the 2024 information?
For the graph or this?
The graph, yeah.
The graph is 2024, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll shift it for 12 months, so there'll be a 12-month cycle on it every month.
Great, thank you.
I really like the graph, Amanda. That's very helpful.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, I like it too, and this level of detail is, I think, perfect for our needs in the monthly meeting.
Okay. If something changes, as things adjust, Dave and I have been in a lot of discussions about what should be and where and how to calculate. So please, every month, if there's something different or more questions, please let me know. I'm glad to, adjust this as we go. So.
Do you want to demo the next chart or talk about
Yes,
it?
yep.
Or just talk about this?
I wasn't sure what order it was in, so you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's after this.
Okay. So Dave and I were talking about construction costs, like how much are we spending? And so we wanted to do a visual for the project from the beginning of the project in 2021 to the end of 2024 to say how much, all the millions of dollars we spent, which I don't have a total here, but where is it going? And so you can see here that really 50% of it is to our subcontractors for the work they're doing, installing, hanging fiber, and digging fiber, etc. This is then you can see equipment purchases, professional fees, permit and pole applications. There is some loan interest, and then miscellaneous construction costs is garbage removal when the town employees have done some work for the central office and some other oddball items. This is all construction again. This is not installations. I pulled all the installation, like drop cables, ONUs or ONTs or whatever they're called. And the portion of Gleemon's work out. Installations is a separate bucket. So this is just construction. So this is something we'll keep up. I probably won't update it every month because it's not going to change drastically every month. So.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions
Yep.
on the how we're spending the money to build the network, a mile of $1 of expenditure? I think for me, I think one of the most useful parts of this is to see how this compares to other projects that other engineering firms that the engineering firm we're looking at is working to navigate, as well as talking to other ISPs. Like, is this the right mix? Should we be spending half the money on the labor of building the network, roughly 30% on all the equipment, the fiber that goes in the ground or on aerial, professional fees, permitting? Like, we don't know how this compares to others, if we're spending too much or too little, or what the right mix is. But now we have a starting point. So as of today, we can say this is what we've done through the first 3+ years of the project. I guess the first 4 years of the project. Is this the right mix? Are there more efficiencies that we could find someplace, or something else? Dan Lamb.
I guess one question I would have is, do these proportions change during the life cycle of the project? Do we go from more being spent on professional fees early on or later on? You know what I mean?
I think we probably have all the data where we could do it by year over the last 4 years and to see how it's shifting. I imagine the beginning is all the professional fees, which includes the engineering, is probably a bigger piece. And then as construction happens, it kind of moves to be a smaller piece over time.
Right.
Once the project's done, new construction might have some mix of this too. Like, eventually, like, someone's going to say, hey, I'm building a new road in town and I want you to run fiber a mile. This will help us kind of like, what's it going to cost and what are the expenses going to be and what's the mix, and then how do we determine if we make that investment?
Yeah, I just think this will look different in 3 years, a lot different.
Hopefully when we're done, there's yeah, we look at there's 4 different places where we're thinking about the cost. Hugest part financially is the construction, building this network across the whole town. The second is in the cost of installations, bringing the fiber from the poles to the individual homes, both the equipment and the labor, sometimes legal, sometimes other components. The third is the monthly operating expenses, which, as you saw, runs around $20,000 a month right now. We are going to eclipse that eventually. And the fourth is the long-term operations and maintenance costs. How much do we have to have on hand for ongoing repairs and servicing of the network once it's up and running? It won't be zero. Any business is going to need to have some amount of money available as part of operating expense to operate the service beyond installations and monthly expenses. But right now, that piece of the pie is very, very small. Most of it is in construction.
That's a really interesting point. So we would have to have like almost like a trust fund or something set aside for unexpected costs that could come up in the out years.
Yeah, we'll be leaning on the engineering firm who's, like I said, has worked with many ISPs across the country, telephone companies, internet companies, fiber companies, to get a better understanding of what we should be budgeting for operations and maintenance per year. And then Amanda and I talked about, communicating that as the organization becomes an LDC, work with the comptroller's office to find out how much can we retain as a fund balance to maintain operations and maintenance. Because it can't be unlimited. At some point, there's not a lot that we can hold on to, but willing to have that money available to make the repairs and adjustments to the network as it goes on over the next 40 plus years of the life of the network. So those right now are tomorrow problems, not today problems. We have a pretty good plate of today problems, but we will get there.
We'll all be dead by then, so.
Project will continue. All right, just want to do a couple more slides. Trees, do you have any updates on these sales ops you want to cover?
I just want to let everybody know that as far as inventory for installations, we are in really good shape right now. Except for those DLX drop cables, we have plenty of everything on hand to get things done. So we should have no issues in the foreseeable future. The only other we need to wait as far as when we order more of the Sienna units, based on whether we're going to continue with them or go to Calyx, as well as the plume pods. Those are the two biggest things. The other thing is that we reorganized the entire Connex situation at the town, so that the Connex that we recently were allowed to use is now totally for installation clarity equipment, and the other Connex has the construction equipment in there total, just that's all that's in there, so that we don't have a mix of people going between the two to get things taken care of. They know where to go.
Great. Okay. I'm going to share this whole deck with the committee so you can take a look at it deeper if you have questions. I know we have another call in about 10 minutes, so I want to give us a break between the two calls. Pretty hefty customer service month in January, 57 install orders that came in the month of January. This should not say November. You can update that. And then still getting some substantial number of other unrelated calls, as you see 35 in the month of January. Finally, this is the marketing / how things looked. You've seen some of the numbers already, like the number of 49 new contracts, 153 requests on the website in the month of January. Of that, 51 were available. We are now servicing 75% of the people who signed up for service are now live with the service. So you'll see that number is increasing substantially as we're adding more in the green zone. We're getting people who have signed up for service to get them activated and live. Finally, on the website, we had our biggest month ever for users, new users, and total sessions. People are hanging around the site and looking at it. A lot of that is probably related to the letter that we sent out with the tax bill to about 5,500 addresses with the URL. Come check out drydenfiber.com and look for see if your parcel is in the green zone. That is everything I have for this month. I'm working on a scoreboard for MIP. We'll be able to present that probably next month at the meeting, so we can see how we're doing as far as parcels we've reached, miles completed, unserved people we're now reaching, and underserved people we're now reaching. I'll share that with the team next month. Okay. Before we wrap, I know some of you are coming back to the meeting at noon with the prospective engineering partner. Any questions before we close this meeting? Mark? Oh, Mark, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay. I guess my finger's jumpy. So should the town of Caroline hold off on paying any invoices for permits until further notice, or?
Probably for the next 2 days. When's your next abstract? Next week?
Yeah, it won't be until the 20th.
We should have a decision before then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the depth of the conversation the first half regarding poll applications and permitting and engineering. For some of you who can make it at noon, it'll be a good chance to talk to this alternative engineering firm, learn from what they're doing and how they operate. And then we'll sync up either by email or have a call next week. For those of you who can't attend at noon, we will schedule another call with them so you can talk to them. And I'll see if I can get this call at noon recorded so you can listen to the presentation too. Now with that, you have about 7 minutes to take a little break. And somebody will be coming back for that meeting at noon. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
for all the work you do.
Thank you.